Hello and welcome to Kenty Prime Time. Paul Kenty, obviously, with today's show, and it's a ripper today. We're in our new set today, and we're going to show you around that in a minute. It's probably the greatest podcast set you'll ever come across. But before we get going, first, obviously, here with Johnny Elias once again to talk all things sport. And don't say we don't get the big guest today. We've gone out and we've got the South Sydney kicking coach, and he does dabble in a few other sports from time to time, but we know him mostly as a kicking coach for the Rabbitohs. Graham Arnold, thanks for joining us.
That's a great intro. Thanks, Kenty.
All right. So before we get started, though, I want to just have a look at this new set we've got. Okay, so this from now on is going to be our set. It's going to be the exclusive primetime set. We've got this tree sitting over the top of me, which is sitting there like my conscience, just making sure I don't misbehave. And then over on this side, which is the great, I don't think any podcast set in the world's got one of these. We have a genuine North Sydney bear over there. So have a look at that. That's just magnificent. What do you think of that, Arnie?
I think it's great, but I'm wondering what these three kegs are here for.
They're for you. That's your payment for coming on for the show. Okay.
Thank you.
Look, we accommodate for everything on this show. All right. So look, we're just going to talk through things. Arnie, I want to have a chat to you. First, let's just talk a little bit of rugby league before we get into your personal life and see if we can get you to cry.
Thanks.
You're now working at the Rabbitohs, kicking coach. How much work is actually required in that area? How much work do you have to do there to actually become like, I don't know, find that last little 5%? Is that what you're looking for there?
Yeah, I think goal kicking is a big part of rugby league. And, mentally it can go from 6 points to 8 points. You know, when
it's like a golf putt, isn't it?
Yeah, that can put the team in front. So I think it's a very important thing. It's the same with the conversion. The 4 points to 6 points makes a big difference. I went and Wayne asked me for a favour to go over there and have a kick and with the players to see who's a better kicker. And they've actually got some very good kickers. I think Latrell Mitchell, when he does come back, he'll probably be the main goal kicker. But he's a very, very good striker of the ball. But, it's what's important is that mentally when they go to goal kick that, it's all about, the run-up, they're making sure that they've got the routine right and mentally before they kick it that they know where they're going to put it and believe in themselves.
Do you ever kick a goal, Johnny?
I kick plenty of goals off the field, but not on the field, Paulie. Graham, you said something very interesting. It's very important to turn a 4 into a 6, of course. That's what they look for, coaches. When players are off, the leading goal kickers in the game, it'll put them off mentally in the other aspects of the game, wouldn't it, as well?
Yeah, it can do, I think, but that's where you got to, be mentally strong.
Yeah,
as a goal kicker. Yeah. I think that you look at the best goal kickers in the NRL and who they have been, they're mentally strong.
They're mentally strong,
exactly. And
Correct.
It's at the same time. And I say this to the players, I said, listen, it's not that hard because there's no goalkeeper. The ball's not moving. The posts aren't moving. And, it's all about your run-up and your mentality that before you kick it, you're comfortable and you know where you're going to put it. Find a target behind the goal that you want to kick it to and stick by it.
Yeah. I remember a story. I was talking to Ryan Girdler once and you did some work with him years back. And he said to me pretty much the same thing that you said to him. Mate, it's not that hard. You're not running, you're not kicking a moving ball, and you're not trying to get it past a goalkeeper. And he said to you, yeah, but you don't understand how tough it is, And you had him out there on the field at the time. And he said, and you're like, what? And he said, well, it's tougher than you think. And you just walked over, put the ball down without a mound or a tee, walked back, went boom from the sideline, put it through the post and said, what's so hard about that? And so from that moment on, he was just like mentally he was in, right? He was like, okay, there's things I can learn here because I wouldn't say he was skeptical, but he was certainly wondering what else he could learn. And, I think one of the things he taught, you told him too was like it's 4 back, 3 to the side because that's the natural arc of your hip when you kick.
Especially, when they kick with the inside of their foot.
Yeah.
Their leg swings at roughly 45 degrees.
Yep.
But you've got to keep your shoulders at the ball. And if you're running too straight onto the ball, your shoulders will go early and then the ball will go. So when you saw a lot of the kickers, like they hook, the right footers, they hook, or the left, they hook. It's because they're running too straight onto the ball. If they go basically back 4, round 3, they're at roughly 45 degrees on, then their shoulders stay. But, You know, the early 2000s, I had probably 6 clubs at once. You know, going from club to club to club on a different day. To do the goal kicking with, you know, Joel Kane, I did at the West Tigers. Benji Marshall was actually doing some. Pat Richards I taught him how to do some of the kickoffs. He was one of the best strikers of the ball that I've ever seen.
Wow.
When Joel Kane took that swing of the ball that day and he actually kicked the ground in front of it, did you take responsibility for that?
Of course.
He missed the game because of that.
Yeah, I know, he done his knee.
He did. He couldn't play the...
No.
It's the only bloke I've ever known who's copped an injury from a goal kick. Poor bugger. But the relationship at South, it came about. Well, you were responsible for the first 2 wins too. Let's give you goal kicking. Got the Rabbitohs home in both of them.
I texted Wayne straight after the game.
What did he say?
After the Dolphins game, and you know, they won 16-14, and you know, Jamie kicked 2 from 4.
Yeah.
And their kicker, sorry, I don't know, I can't remember. He's kicked 1.
He's kicked 1. Yeah.
1 from 3.
Yeah.
So I text Wayne, mate, goal kicking won you the game today. Well done.
Yeah.
Enjoy. Yeah, thanks, Arnie.
Where's the check?
And then last week against the Dragons,
Yeah.
the field goal, I sent Wayne straight after the game. Mate, congratulations. Kicking won you the game today.
You've got a good friendship with Wayne, haven't you?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, when I did a bit of goal kicking, he took me up to... I went up to Brisbane Broncos just for one day.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And he asked me to work with Darren Lockyer. And, you know, it's funny because I don't think Darren really wanted help at the time. But and the crazy thing was all we did is just change the size of the tee. Because when he used to kick off a kickoff tee, you know, he'd kick it really, really well. But then he went to a lower tee off the ground and he'd strike it and it wouldn't go anywhere near as far. And all I said to him was basically, is there a rule that you have to use a kickoff tee? Is there a rule that you have to use a conversion tee? And he said, no, you can use why don't you use that one then? And he sort of looked at me and went, oh, okay. And then he started using the kickoff tee and he could start kicking much further. Yeah. Because he wasn't, he was
getting under the
striker.
ball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But Wayne asked me to go up there and he picked me up in his ute and from the airport, and we just connected straight away. Yeah. And you know, he comes across. He's completely different away from the camera than what a lot of people see. And you know, I went up there and as I said, did the kicking. I just stayed in touch with him, and I know he loves watching his football, soccer that is. And
okay.
Yeah, he loves watching that. And you know, I've spoken to him before, but you know, and I'm not being disrespectful in any way, but, you know, to be able to speak to an Australian football coach other than Ange Postecoglou or even, you know, he's my age roughly, but, you know, someone, you know, older age.
Yeah, someone
that's been through it all.
Yeah.
Seen it all.
It's sort of, I would struggle really to find someone. But, you know, with Wayne, you know, all the sports are the same. Yes, the tactics are different. The shape of the ball's different. The game's different, but coaching is the same.
Yeah,
you know, it's how you get the best out of people. It's how you know, mentally what you're doing with the players. It's how you communicate with them. And I just felt that you know, there's no better person really to talk to than Wayne.
How similar were you with him in that respect, in your approach to players and? Dealing with players and all that. Like, did you find an affinity with Wayne in how you like to manage players and stuff like that?
Yeah, like if I watch him, for me, when I go to the Rabbits and see what he does, he's dad.
Yeah,
he's dad. And
explain that to us. Though. Like, what's
you see the way the players look at him and that they treat him like, you know, and he treats them like their sons. You know, he puts his arm around them and he's talking to them, he's communicating, and you can see he's relaxed. He's, you know, it's just the communication side of it. And Wayne would be probably one of the best that could sit there and all he does is listen. He listens so well. And that's for me, that's one of the biggest parts of this day and this generation, the way the generations are these days, is listening is so big, more than talking.
Why is that? Why do you have to? Because in the old days, like Warren Ryan, for example, wouldn't survive today. He just wouldn't be able to coach, and because he was a my way or the highway coach, and to the point extremely paranoid, but brilliant. And probably, well, I believe, changed the game more than any coach in history with what he did. He owns the modern template for how rugby league is played. But his bedside manner was atrocious. You know, he had the ability to, he could upset, you know, little old ladies. Wayne's the total opposite. Wayne just has this ability to just sit there and be calm, and everyone's under stress. Wayne's just sitting there doing his knitting.
Yeah, and you know, it's not just about your professional life; it's also about personal. You know, because you know, I used to say to the players all the time, it's about getting the balance right. Because if your personal life has an effect, something's not going right there, it'll affect your professional life. Yeah. And vice versa. If something's not going well in the professional side, it'll affect your personal life that you'll take home with you. And, you know, I think, again, you know, one of the things I learned off Wayne as well was, you know, you need to know the person as well, you know, that you're coaching and you know, and making sure, you know, just going up, how's life at home? Everything good? Yeah, no, everything's great. Okay, that's good. If there's something wrong, tell me. What
about those difficult characters, though, that won't allow you in and a little bit more closed in their personality? Does that make it easier to like coach because they don't want that, or does it make it harder to coach because they probably do need that and won't admit to it? Like, how do you find yourself reaching to those players who probably don't want the cuddle or don't want the questions about home life, but who probably at some level do need it?
They're probably the easiest ones to read.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they're always, you know, quite standoffish when I say that. They're in their own little group or they've got their own little ways. And then if you see they're different all of a sudden, then you know there's something going wrong.
Do you change that though? Like, what if that's just their personality, that they're quiet, they don't want to be, you know, they prefer to be on the edge of the group rather than the centre of the group? Like,
it's about sitting down individually. Even like I used to with you know, some of the boys with the Socceroos, I'd take them for a walk, get takeaway coffees. Yeah, just go for a stroll. You know, give them a coffee and say, "Come on, let's go for a walk. How's life? How's everything going? You know, I can see your body language is a bit down. I can see your energy's a bit down. Is everything all right? Are you upset about something?" And letting them talk. Yeah. And okay, that's done. Right, let's get on with it now. We're here to win.
Yeah, Graham, it's not all about tactics being a coach. There's so many other avenues you got to be good at. Yeah. You know, father figure.
Johnny, especially these days, I think, again, with the new generation. And you know, with one of the big parts as well is your backroom staff. You know, because if they've all got to be on the same page as a head coach and the same messaging and the same, you know, the same way. And you know, the way that things are these days. Yes, tactics. You know, if you had the four main pillars: technical, tactical, physical, mental.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. That's how it's always been. I would now go change it, put mental first, because if you're not mentally right, or if you have any mental type issues, technically, you're not going to be great. Even though you've got the best technique in the world. If Cristiano Ronaldo, best technique in the world, Lionel Messi, if mentally they're not right, technically they'll be sloppy. Right? Physically, if you can sprint 100 metres at the same pace you do, right, or a great athlete, and if you got 3 or 4 of them that can run 100 metres in 11 seconds, who's going to win?
The one who's mentally switched on.
The one who's mentally ready.
Johnny, you got some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have, Graham. I'm glad you brought that up. Look, just recently, rugby league players, there was Justin Olam and Kieran Thorne. They were medically retired physically. There was something wrong, a physical component somewhere in their bodies. Do you think there's going to be a day or it's going to be a trend? Because mental illness is everywhere at the moment. Tell me, can a player be, just your advice, I'm keen on this, medically unfit mentally?
Well, probably yes and no, but I would say yes.
Okay.
You can just see it. The player, if he's mentally not right, you're better off not even playing him, right? Because he's not going to perform. But maybe the most important thing is why he's feeling like that. And then it's obviously these days, most clubs have psychologists or sports scientists and doctors, mental. But a lot of the times it's down to the coach and what the coach says to him or how he feels in that group with the players. And then it's, as I said, it's about the communication. If the coach is not talking to him and those type of things, well then, yeah, it won't get any better.
But we haven't seen a case where there's been a player retired medically, unfit, mentally. I haven't.
No, I haven't.
We've come across the physical component, but we haven't come the mental component.
Yeah.
Whether like they've had a breakdown or something.
Breakdown, trauma. They call them micro traumas.
Yeah.
Can they go to the league, Paul, and say, listen, I can't play this game anymore. The doctor's already told me that I'm mentally unfit.
But the flip side to it, though, is also that, to your point, mentally is one of your weapons now. And if you can't cope with something mentally, and we see this with athletes, and you would have seen it a lot at World Cup level and the coaching you did there with the Socceroos. Some players are very look. I see. I'll give you a good example. That I won't embarrass the fighter, but there's a fighter who fighting in Australia who, when he gets in the gym to spar, he's just like he's world class.
Yeah, we know.
And he's virtually unbeatable. But between the gym and the arena where he goes to fight, mentally he just comes undone a little bit, and he just never quite and he surprises people because he never quite gets to where everyone expects him to be in the fight, and it's sort of put down as a mental thing. And that's just part of your arsenal. That's as important to you as whether you've got speed or whether you've got a sidestep or whether you can kick with the left foot or all these different aspects or whatever your skill makeups are, or whether you can understand the game tactically or whatever. Your mental strength is a weapon or a tool, and do we not get to? Are we going to get to a stage where a guy claims that, well, because I don't have it, I'm owed some sort of compensation or some sort of payout because of the fact that they can't get there? Like it's a difficult one, though.
Can a player retire? Can a club retire a player who's under contract, say a 3-year contract? You're medically unfit mentally. Is that going to happen, Paul?
Well, I don't. Look, I'm sure it will at some point.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the flip side, though, okay? This is the one, this fascinates me, okay? The Scallywags. The opposite, right? The guys, and one of the things I remember when you were coaching with Gus Hiddink years and years and years ago, and he said about the time of the 06 World Cup when he came in, and he spoke about how he loves coaching the Australian personality, the go-get-em sort of attitude. He really liked that about the Australian players. They probably didn't have the skill levels that other nations had, but their mentality was very, very strong and very aggressive. And what he liked was the Scallywags in the team and the guys who just sort of walked to a slightly different beat a little bit. And because the reason being was mentally they handled stress better, they handled pressure better, because I assume the way they lived their lives.
Yeah, and I think, if I look back to the 80s, 90s when I was playing with the Socceroos, we were probably a team of Scallywags.
Yeah.
And we had, so many different characters, and as you go on and get further, then it gets less these days because of all the professionalism.
Yeah, they coach it out of them too. Yeah, and they leave some behind because they're Scallywags.
Yeah. But, under Gus loved, when he came to Australia, and he was only here for 12 days. He was coaching PSV at the time. Yeah. And I was his assistant. He loved the Australian banter. He loved the Australian way. He couldn't believe that you could speak to people the way you could as Australians. And he used to love it, He ended up getting into the banter and calling people, nicknames as well. Where in Holland it wasn't like that. But... a couple of, just little, and they weren't scallywags because I don't want to call them scallywags, but a couple of little things that he did mentally to fix players in the group. Like one was, like Mark Viduka, for example. And we had to play Solomon Islands here in Australia, the last final Oceania playoff at that time. And Gus is there and he says to me, so who's captain? Because Craig Moore was injured at the time. And I said, maybe Lucas Neal, Schwarzer. He goes, where's Duke? Where's Duke? That's what he used to call him. And Mark, and they'd flown over from Europe, obviously, and Mark had gone for a coffee with his dad and in Bondi. And so I had to go get him. He said, I want him to come back. And he said, he said to Mark, Dukes, who should be captain? And Dukes has gone, probably Lucas Neal or Schwartz. And Hiddink goes, no, you. And Dukes has looked at him. I'm not a captain. Yes, you are. He said, because when you are leading by the way you can lead, you're taking us to the World Cup. That sparked him up. And if you remember, not long after, he went back to Liverpool, went back to Leeds, scored 4 against Liverpool.
Yeah, gave him the confidence.
And he was really then focused. And the other one was Harry Kuehl. Harry, he dropped him. He didn't start him against Uruguay in the game that we won the penalty shootout here, and didn't start him. I was obviously assistant. I was out warming the players up and that before the game, and I didn't even realise that Harry didn't even go out for the warm up.
Oh, well, had the shits.
Yeah, and so after the game, so then Harry didn't start. Tony Popovic got a yellow card for a tackle on Recoba, and so straight away, get him off. He's yelling at me, get him off to Popper, because he knew that with his experience, the South Americans would just go at Popper to get the second yellow. But anyhow, after the game, we won. He brought Harry on just before half-time. After the game, Harry went on, and set up the goal. Bresciano scored, and then after the game, it was the whole of the country's celebrating. And Hiddink comes up to me and says, right, when we get back to the hotel, I want you, Viduka, and Harry Kuehl in my room. I'm not having it. And I'm like, wow, what the hell's going on? We've just won. Yeah. We just qualified for the first time in 32 years, 34 years. And I'm like, what's going on? He says, I'm not putting up with this. And so we get back to the hotel. I grabbed it from Dukes. And Dukes is like, well, what's happened? What's going on? Harry. And we go up to his room, and he just laid the law down. So you didn't go out and warm up. So you stayed in the dressing room. So you're not part of this team. Right? Do you know how many players are in your team, Harry? And Harry's looking, and he goes, 1. But in my team, there's 23.
Oh, right. I like that.
And he said, and if you don't want to be part of this team, don't come again. This is straight after one of the biggest moments ever. Yeah. And that just mentally, then Harry was the first one in, and Harry was incredible. I think Harry Kuehl's probably the best footballer we've ever had. But just that mental thing, that's what Hus was about. Yeah. Just mentally getting them all ready to go.
Yeah. So important.
Well, there's something to be said for them. And Johnny, you had Wayne, I don't know if you know this, Arnie, one of Wayne's favourite players is Johnny. And Johnny takes credit for launching Wayne's career. Wayne was just a knockabout Brisbane rugby league coach until Johnny ended his life, and then won the premiership in '85 with South Brisbane. Out of that, Wayne got to start at the Canberra Raiders, and the rest is history. But it didn't start so well, did it, John?
No, I'll tell you a little bit about Wayne. Yeah, I'd left Sydney in '84. I had to leave. I was living a double life. So anyway, I got to Brisbane. First training session, mind you, and you wouldn't believe it. 9 police cars come into the first training session. Yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, what's going on here? The 9 police cars, they played for Brisbane South. That's the team I played for, Magpies. And I thought, oh my God, what am I doing here? But what I didn't know was a blessing went up in the grand final. Anyway, he didn't put me in reserve grade for 2 weeks. He'd left me in reserve grade for 2 weeks, hadn't spoken to me. And now Graham and Paul, I was busted. I mean, busted as in I had a job, first job I've ever had. I was working as a brickies labourer. See, brickies labour is usually...
And he doesn't do manual labour real well either, Arnie. So,
Graham.
So let's be honest.
Brickies labour is usually 1 labourer to 1 brickie. Maximum is 1 labourer to 2 brickies. They had me 1 labourer, myself to 3 brickies, so I was gone. I had to cook for myself. I was missing Mama Susie. So I've rung him this time after the second game in reserve grade. Hello, Wayne? Yes. I know it is. It's John Elias here. Yes, I know. I already told you. I said, listen, Wayne, I didn't come all this way from Brisbane to play reserve grade. I just done 55 tackles. You know what? You can go and get yourself fucked. And I thought, and he starts laughing. Yeah. And I'm angry. As I said earlier, I'm busted. I'm sweating. I want to go home. I miss me mum. I don't want to cook. I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to clean. I said, Wayne, why are you fucking laughing? I swore again. He says, John, we don't do stats in reserve grade. But the moral of the story there is, don't lie to Wayne Bennett.
No.
So,
But
it
do
ended
you
up being a
think?
great season. And I was a Scallywag, I must say.
But
he said, John...
Well, you're man of the match in the grand final, so
yeah,
let's be honest.
I had to produce something special.
Well, you did.
Yeah. He said, I'd never met someone like you before you or after you, except Alfie Langer. He says, if you want to talk about scallywags, you're the scallywag. But he was the best coach I've ever had.
Yeah.
And he was honest. He could be on your level. I loved him.
That's
and
big.
we're still close.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me is with him is he's still going.
Mm.
You know, 75.
Yeah, and he's going to still go.
And he's still going
He's
so
on
well,
time,
you know.
it's
And probably the main reason he's still going like that is because he's adapted to the generations as he goes.
Yes.
He's not the old school way. Because imagine if he spoke to you like that today.
If I spoke to him like today,
Well,
also he keeps things simple. It's so
Yeah,
it is so important the way you coach at the moment. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
And get the players to love you and buy into it.
Exactly.
That's his big advantage he's got. And no matter what Wayne Bennett says when he's coaching, they're going to believe him regardless. He's a Hall of Famer.
Yep. 100%.
how would he handle Alfie today, you reckon?
I don't.
Well, you said they can handle stress and
Back
pressure.
in the 90s, Kevy actually told this story the other day on James Graham's podcast about Kevy going down, Alfie going down, pretending to be hurt. Kelvin Giles came on. Alfie, you never go down. What's the matter? He said, "Can you find out who won the slipper for me?"
Yeah.
Right. Trevor, they played the Roosters one day. Okay, way back in the 90s, and people don't remember this, but back in the 90s when you played the footy stadium, and it was the first big screen in a grand stadium in Australia. And so you could watch the game as well. But during the game, they used to switch to the races at Randwick. So they'd show the races. Right?
You're kidding.
This is how times have changed. Halfway through the first half or whatever, go to race 3 at Randwick and off they go.
Yeah.
Anyway, because the Broncos, their mood was shifting whether they were winning or losing on the punt. So in there, Wayne got the shifts and said, right, no more gambling, right? No more punting on a Saturday if we're playing. It's barred. So anyway, they're playing. They're in Sydney one day. They're playing at the footy stadium. I think it was the Roosters they're playing, and they're at breakfast in the morning. And Alfie says to Trevor Gilmeister, "Mate, there's a good thing today at Randwick." And Gilmeister goes, "Alf, leave me alone. I don't want to be part of it." The rules were no more gambling. And Alfie, he said, "Look, no one has to know." He said, "We'll just get on." He said, "Alf, leave me alone." So anyway, they get the bus to the ground on the way to play. And Alfie's up the back of the bus, and he's laying into the window with a little radio to his ear, and he's listening to 2KY at the races. And he's going, "Gilly, this thing's paying 6-1. He said, "We've got to get on." He said, "I've got a bloke who can get on for us." And Gilly's like, "Alfie, just leave me alone, right? Just, I don't want any part of it." Next minute, they're in the dressing room, they're getting dressed. Alfie's walked up, "Mate, I can still get on." He said, "Alf, leave it." So anyway, Alfie's just thought, he's walking away. What do I do? Then they get out and they warm up. Now, Alfie was bad at warming up. Alfie his idea of warming up, he used to walk out, he'd see where the sun is, he'd turn his back to the sun, and he'd slowly bend over and he'd let the sun warm up his hamstrings. Okay, like that was his idea.
Must have been up in Brisbane.
Yeah, but the less he could do to warm up was the better for Alf. Anyway, he says to Gilly during the warm-up, "Gilly, I can still get on here." And he goes, "For fuck's sake, Alf." He said, "Mate, leave me alone." Anyway, so that's it. It all ends. They go out. They start the game. They start playing. Anyway, they get to scrum at one point. They all pack in. And back in those days, they were rule scrums where you're fighting for the loose head, and you're pushing and shoving against each other, and you're trying to get your hooker in position, all that sort of business. So they're in this scrum and they're wrestling and moving around. And in those days, there wasn't a tunnel that was always apparent. The halfbacks used to have to wait till they found the tunnel to put the ball in. That's because the props' feet were coming across, not like they are today. So after a while, though, the scrum's starting to complain, "Put the ball in, put the ball in." Gilly says, "Alf, put the ball in." And anyway, Alfie's just standing and he's moving around. Gilly puts his head out of the second row. Alfie's looking at the screen, at the race on the screen, looks at it and goes, "I fucking told you that thing would win."
It was good to see he was focused on the game.
But
those sort of players could get man of the match.
But you know what? The flip side, this is no bullshit, right? Gilly said, mate, out of the scrum, though, Alfie did a show and go and scores. He said, no, that's the genius of Alf. You know what I mean?
Did Alfie do the knock-on to cause a scrum? So he could watch it?
But honestly, that's
Perfect
the best. But that's so important, though, isn't it, to have that mentality, those sorts of guys, isn't it? The guys that can just thrive under the pressure.
There is no pressure for them.
It's amazing, isn't it?
They don't. It doesn't even register with them.
Who's the best you've come across in that regard?
Probably, and not Scallywag type of thing, but probably Timmy Cale.
Yeah.
Yeah, he and Big Viduka, but like Duke's hated training. He turned up. He hated meetings. You know, as you said about keeping it simple. He just loved playing the game.
Yeah.
If he could have gone away with not having to train and all that.
Yeah.
But Timmy, mentally, I think Timmy's one of the strongest we've ever had. Timmy Cale. He, he just knew that he was going to score.
Yeah.
You could just see it. The belief in himself, and he just knew he was going to do it.
As much as we love the Aloisi penalty goal too, yeah, for me, my favourite like Australian soccer moment ever.
You had one, did you?
Yeah, Cale Kaiserslautern in 06.
Yeah.
And what fascinating, I'm fascinated with you call him Hoes.
Goes.
Yeah,
Goes. The G in Dutch is a G.
Yeah, it's Husgidink, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's actually the opposite.
Yeah, Goes.
Otherwise,
Otherwise, everyone calls him Gus. He hates it.
Hates Gus.
Hates Gus.
That's Australian slang.
So
you can call him Gus.
But at that World Cup, Arnie, I remember him coming out, and I was over there having a chat one day, and he was very, very good to speak to, and always interesting to speak to. And I remember he said, the strategy was we've got to beat Japan, minimise the loss against Brazil, and then go out. Croatia was the third game, and try and get a draw against Croatia, and that should qualify us. And everyone's thinking, mate, what about this guy? He's really planned ahead. But not only that, tactically in the game, he'd actually planned. Talk us through that Japanese game where Australia were behind 1-0 behind Japan, but that was all not part of the strategy. Obviously, they would have preferred 0-0.
We didn't want that.
But it didn't faze him either.
No. And look, I can just say, Kenty, that what I learned off Gus Hiddink in 1 year would have taken me 10 years on my own.
Wow. Yeah. That's
His planning, his preparation for planning, and everything was incredible off the field. You know?
Give us an example of that.
Well, like for example, when we played Uruguay in Uruguay, or even when we played Solomon Islands here, he's just his planning of preparation for the camp.
Yeah.
To make sure everything was right.
Mm-hmm.
With aeroplanes, with flights, with all that type of stuff. So there's no distractions for the players. Down to what you're saying about the Japan game, he had plan A, B, C, and D. Every game.
Yeah.
Plan A was how we started. If we're losing, plan B, right? Plan B was substitute these players or change the system a bit. Plan C was just to go for it if we're losing, and Plan D was we're winning and how to play the game out. Now, I did that with the World Cup, the last World Cup, when we were winning against Tunisia or Denmark. I went to a back five in the last 10 minutes. I learned all that stuff through Gus.
Yeah.
So when people sit there and go, like when you're saying about Timmy, even with the Uruguay game, the penalty shootout, he practiced.
Yeah.
So it was like he said to me, "So Arnie, where will the Australian fans sit? Right, where will the Uruguayans? Before the Uruguay game out at Homebush." And I said to him, I had to ask the team manager, and the team manager checked up on it. He said, normally they're on the left. Yeah. When you go out the tunnel, they're on the left.
Yep.
That's where all the fans are. He says, right, we get to a penalty shootout, we have to shoot down there.
Down straight in.
And you're thinking, what's he thinking that for straight away? You know? But he says, we've got to go left. Right, so we go down there. Right, okay. Then at the end of training, towards the back end of training, we practiced the penalty shootout.
Yeah.
And that was centre circle, mentally.
Yeah.
Centre circle drill. Yeah. Just a possession drill. All the players, one at a time, they had to walk down and take a penalty. So they had to practice the walk down.
Practice the walk down and all that as well.
Walk down, And then I had to blow the whistle. Like I was the referee down there blowing
Yeah.
the whistle. And he said, and on their way back, ask them which side they're going to put it. Right?
On their way back.
Like after they took the penalty,
Yeah.
Mark Viduka, the night before practicing, he did exactly the same as what he did when he missed it in the game.
Oh, really?
Exactly the same. So hitting. So the thing was he said that, like Harry Kill, get up. He stepped up, took the first pen.
Yeah.
Right. As soon as he took it, went in.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd say to him, H, where are you going to put it?
Yeah.
That side, on the left side, my left side. And
Yeah.
that. Okay. Don't change your mind. Just do it. To
that's
get rid
clever.
of confusion.
Fusion.
Yeah.
That you get up there
Second
under
guessing
And a bit of
pressure.
anxiety as well.
And
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying with the preparation of planning from hitting was incredible, right down to that.
They were prepared for it.
Yeah, prepared for everything.
Yeah.
So when you get to the Japan game, yes, we didn't want to be down
No.
1-0.
Of course.
He dropped Timmy, Cale,
Yeah.
and he didn't even talk to Timmy, didn't tell Timmy. I had to go knock on the door and tell Timmy,
That
you're
would've
not
been fun.
starting. Yeah, he wasn't happy, but Timmy's straight away, yeah, no worries, I'll come off the bench and score.
And he did.
That was the first thing he said. And I was like, okay, great, you okay? And he says, yeah, no problem. But he was pissed
That's
off.
of
Yeah.
course.
And but then we're down 1-0. And then straight away, Gus was like, righto, get him off, let's plan B.
He had his plans.
Plan B, plan C.
But that's what happened because, and they played a style. And correct me if I'm wrong here. They played hitting love that high energy style that Australia just naturally has in most sports, to be fair, but particularly in the Socceroos. So it was like run them, and if we fall behind, then the whole game. So he brought Cahill on and what else?
Yeah, no, we had, because Japan didn't adapt to what we did. And that's
Yeah.
what he always says, and he believes is, some coaches are tactically just plan A and that's it.
Yeah.
Now, if we had plan B and C, so we finished the game with up front Kuhl, Cahill, Aloisi, Viduka, Josh Kennedy.
Wow, five players
five
up the front.
strikers.
5 strikers.
And we went and we got rid of a central defender at the back, Craig Moore, I think it was, and we just had Lucas Neal and just had 3 at the back, man on man. He said, "Oh, I'd rather lose 2-0 than lose 1. Let's go for it."
Yeah.
That was his mentality.
And they went from 1-0 to 3 in the last 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Scored 3 goals.
Yeah. So Timmy got 2, and Johnny Aloisi got 1.
Yeah.
And but as I said, people think, it was all off the cuff.
Yeah.
No way.
So when you coached the Socceroos at the last World Cup, tell us how your preparation for that went and how, because it was a different squad and there was a bit of a spark in the team at different times, wasn't there? Like they, and sort of you drew this momentum as you started to get through the tournament.
Yeah, look, it's probably the toughest campaign, the Socceroos have ever had because of COVID.
Yeah.
And, a lot of players couldn't come. They were getting a lot of pressure off their clubs not to come because, you go back and you got to go into isolation for 2 weeks or, you got to, it's...
It wasn't a lot of bullshit all that.
It made it really, really hard. But, we had to go through the playoffs with UAE, obviously, to beat them. We got 3rd in our group out of 2 groups. And so we beat UAE 2-1, and then obviously the Peru game. But again, it was a lot of hitting stuff.
Yeah.
Came back to me.
So how much do you change the tactics from team to team that you're playing? Like how
Playing
much?
against?
Playing against. Yeah. So, Tunisia to whoever.
Denmark, yeah.
Like how much do you change your tactics for the game as a coach?
You keep it simple. You've got to play your players to the best of their own
strengths,
ability and their strengths. But if you see that the left side of, Denmark or Tunisia is weak, well then, you work the team in a way to attack down their left-hand side. So, they've got strengths. Like when we played Argentina and they got Lionel Messi playing.
Yeah.
Obviously they got their strengths. And
So what do you do when you're doing that?
Well, Messi is he's a genius.
Yeah.
But what he does, it's again, you're talking about the mental side of things. Mate, we're playing the game against Argentina. He's walking, he's walking the whole time he's offside, right? But he's looking up in the crowd. He's wanting us to switch off.
Yep.
And I showed the boys clips. Look at Messi. Look, he's looking up there. He's wanting you to switch off. Don't switch off, and don't stay back to keep him onside.
Yeah.
But soon as they get possession and they start coming forward, we drop. Then he's onside.
Yeah.
That's when you need to pick him up.
Right.
That's when you need
That's
to be
clever,
ready.
though, because he's saving energy too,
Yeah.
isn't he?
Oh,
He's
especially at his
dictating to
age.
the defence, yeah.
Especially at his age, and that's how he's changed. I coached against him in 2007 at the Olympics.
Oh,
we
really?
played Argentina, yeah.
And he's a different player then?
Well, he was number 10. He just started playing
Yeah, but
at Barca.
just
And,
played a different style?
yeah. But now he's adapted with his age,
Yeah.
and he's still a freak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so it's about how you get the best out of the
And longevity.
individuals.
The coaching side of it, obviously, you got back, and it was a surprise to a lot of us when you resigned. Okay, like, you know, I've known you, and I could sort of sense that there was an unhappiness there, and there was. I reckon I spoke to you one day, and I reckon that was at the time that you were really tossing up and starting to try and convince yourself of what you wanted to do.
Yep.
And I sort of sensed, I didn't think you'd quit, to be fair. So I'm not going to say
Don't
I
say you
kept that.
quit.
No, well, resigned.
Thank you.
I
I don't
There
like.
is a big difference, yeah.
I don't like that. Like, I'm just saying, you know, some of the Australian football journalists wrote where I quit. I didn't quit.
Yeah,
I resigned for the purpose of what was the best for the nation
yeah.
and the players.
Just on that, Johnny talks about this. Like,
yeah, me and Paul been having a few discussions the last few days. When the players, just say players out of form or he's not right, they usually drop in a reserve grade, or there's been cases where they just give them 1 or 2 weeks off, get them right mentally. Head coaches don't have that availability. What I want to say to you is, Graham, you must have been, for you to say, you lost the passion, of course, didn't you? You lost the passion, you lost the desire, but the main reason was because you didn't want to let the players down. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Did you get a thank you from anybody?
I'm
'Cause
waiting.
that took a lot of courage. I'm being serious. Did anyone come up and say thank you for being bloody honest about it?
I don't think they understood.
Was that-
why not?
Do something
They didn't
like that.
understand. No,
Wow.
but
what didn't they understand?
they didn't
understand.
understand where I was coming from.
But you didn't want to let
because-
the players down.
No, I didn't want to let the players down and the nation down because I'd been there for 6 years. I had a discussion with a senior group of players the day before the Indonesia game, and there was a couple of things said that I'll keep to myself
Yeah.
that really, really put another tick next to why it was probably time.
Yeah,
And they were talking about younger players and certain backroom staff members, and there's nothing I can do about that. You can't get rid of staff when they're under contract by Football Australia.
Okay, gotcha.
And players are, of course, aren't under contract with Football Australia. But I just felt that, and again, it's like after last night's result, 2-0 win against China, and everything was talked about was qualifying directly, and I just felt that I wanted to give the new coach, who, again, when I sat down with the 3 main people about my resignation, I actually mentioned Tony Popovic as being the replacement.
Yep.
But, for me, I wanted to give him 8 games. I could have stayed on for 2 more. Oh, let's wait and see. Arnie, don't worry, you'll be right. Let's just wait and see another 2 games, then another 2.
Yeah.
Where I felt at that time, I wanted to do the right thing by the players and the nation, that give Tony Popovic and the players 24 points, 8 games, to get that direct qualification. And I say it to you, I don't regret it one minute.
When you look back at it, though, where do you think it began, that period where you went from, okay, you bounce out of bed, beautiful, let's get into it, we've got full day ahead of you, we've got to do this, to you got to the point where, again, you rang up Wayne, you spoke to Wayne, he asked you basically, is the lemon dry? And you said, yeah, you've squeezed it as much as I can.
Yeah.
Where did that begin, and when did you start to recognise, where do you think it began? Because I don't know if you would have recognised it at the time. And then when did you recognise that, hang on, I'm in some trouble here, I'm not getting out of this what I want to get out of it anymore as far as my energy and my passion for it?
I just felt that I took them as far as I could. Now there's,
as in they weren't learning any more from you, or you couldn't give any more to them,
both.
and you thought both.
And there was some hurtful moments in games that you just can't let go, like the way we lost to Argentina at the World Cup.
Yep.
Like we could have won it.
Yeah.
Then
I spoke to you. I won't say
yeah,
what you said, but I
yeah.
spoke to you after it, and I remember how disappointed you
Yeah.
were. And
it became like a theme for the next 14 months.
yep.
And that was obviously the Argentina game. Then we played England at Wembley.
Mm.
We should have won the game. It was the same type of thing of missing the chances. Those 1%ers
Yeah.
weren't happening.
That was all you're frustrated about. That was,
Yeah.
when the opportunity was there, they didn't take it. And you, without getting too far into it, you'd actually told them before the game, boys, when this happens, this is what we do, and they weren't doing it.
Yeah, and the 1%ers, right? Then the final nail really was the Asian Cup.
Mm.
We're up 1-0 against South Korea, right? We beat South Korea. We go into pot 1 for the World Cup draw, which and our ranking would have gone up into probably number 19, 20 in the world.
Yeah.
Right? And we're up 1-0. We should have been up 4.
Mm.
And then, like 2 minutes to go, penalty against, extra time, player sent off. And it's like they're not learning lessons.
Mm.
They're not. They're
So
not.
they weren't responding to you like
Yeah.
you wanted them to anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So then there's those little painful things in my belly.
Mm.
You know what I
Mm.
mean? And then I just felt that, as I said, it was just time. You just know it. But
Yeah.
if you've had that
It
experience,
still must be difficult to let go of because you're
it's-
Australian coach. Like that's like you're going to look back one day and say to yourself, "I
Don't worry.
I was the Australian." Like, I know you played for Australia as well and all that, but Australian coach is such a
Big decision.
beautiful job to have.
Yeah. It's still hard. You know, I'll be honest. I didn't watch a game last night. It's very difficult to watch.
Yeah.
But as I said, I could have hung on, but I just didn't feel right. So is the Socceroos is not Graham Arnold's team.
Yeah.
It's Australia's team.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if I feel and felt that I didn't have that in me anymore, I felt that I had to make that decision for the good of the players. Because if I'm turning up half-assed,
Yeah.
right, into camp, if I am just like, I couldn't be bothered to go and watch an A-League games anymore.
Yeah.
And I was flying over to Europe
Mm.
from here to watch, like Harry Sutter and these guys,
Yeah.
to watch them meet the boss at their clubs and go and watch them. And if I couldn't be bothered doing that anymore, then if I'm not 100% invested, well, then how can I expect the players to?
Yeah.
So when I lost that a little bit, I thought, okay, it's time.
Graham, you said to Paul earlier that you didn't quit.
No.
You just okay. The Graham Arnold of today. Do you want to coach again?
Yes, I'm ready.
The energy's
Honestly.
back, the fire's
And
back.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
and why?
Why? Because it's what I love. There is nothing better. You should know.
Yeah.
What did you miss most when you retired as a player? The dressing room?
Yes.
Exactly. And what I miss is obviously the everyday, the purpose of every day. There's nothing better than planning from Monday to Friday and winning on Saturday. And there's nothing better than a culture, having a great culture with, your staff and with the players. That's what I miss the most. Do I miss all the other stuff? No, not at all. But, it was something that I did at the time, but am I ready to go back coaching? 100%. I can't wait to get back into it. I'm waiting at the moment to see where that is. And then when it comes, I just, at the age of 61 and a half, I want to have a good
6 and a
another
half, I like that.
4 or 5 years.
And having that break, you've learnt?
Yeah.
Have you learned a lot from that break?
I've learned
anything differently?
Yeah.
What would you do differently, Graham?
What I would do differently is probably have
Or would you?
more purpose in a day. There's when you've got nothing and no purpose in a day of some doing something, then mentally it's hard. But what I've learnt the most is how much I really love coaching.
Okay, that's good.
That's there's, as I said, there's no better feeling. Like when I was coaching here in Australia, there's no better feeling than seeing a kid that you've brought up or given a chance to, and then he's playing in Europe, and he's playing in a big club, or he's playing. There's nothing better than feeling that when you catch up with him and see him a few years later, and they're so grateful and happy. And all I want to do is help kids and help kids' careers, because I had people help mine. So at my age now, I've got to help them.
Have you had any nibbles?
Look, I have to say a few,
Mm.
but at my age, there got to be ones that are interesting.
Yeah.
Graham, if
like-
he offered come to coach Australia again, would you do it? I'm talking about the Matildas. They're looking for a coach. Why? Why not?
Well, they can ask me.
And would you do it?
Well, I'm looking for a job at the moment.
Okay.
That'd be interesting, actually.
That'd be very interesting. Would you coach them
Matilda.
any differently? Would it be? It'd be basically the same, wouldn't it? Technically, it'd be the same.
Exactly.
But mentally, maybe a little bit different. How you deal
Yeah,
with
obviously
females.
how you deal with them, but a lot of men, coaches who coach men's football go back to women's football.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you what, well, mate, we might try and get you out of a job.
We wish you all the
What we
best.
might do is I might just put a little super up with your phone number down the bottom. If
If you
anyone's
can,
if
yeah.
anyone's got a job, they can call you.
Yeah,
How's that? Would you?
Triple O.
Triple
I've
O,
got a direct
right.
number of that place.
We might get Johnny to manage it. How would
Yeah, I'll
that
manage
go?
it. How's that?
Two will go out,
Oh,
one will come back.
That's it.
All right, mate. Thank you very much for coming on today, mate. I really appreciate it. I find it fascinating, all that
Yeah.
insight into.
Mate, we could have stayed here for another 2 hours.
Oh,
Sounds good,
we
very
like
good.
that. It sounds like our weekends, this does. So.
No, thanks for
nothing
having
about
me.
soccer,
Much,
yeah.
much appreciated. It's good to get back in these type of things. Fantastic.
Beautiful. All right, well, there he is, Graham Arnold here with Johnny and myself. Make sure you click on Kenty Prime Time for next week, Kenty Blitz for the rest of the week. We've got Rugby League coming out of our Rissole, so just wherever you can find it, click on it. It's on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, whatever. Off you go. Thanks for joining us. See you later.
Go the Rabbitohs.